We lit, we lit. We lit, we lit. Yeah.
What up, good people? This is your girl Simona with Lit Love Journey. So glad you are joining us, whether you're watching live or the replay. We are so glad to have you here. Lit Love Journey, if you don't already know, we are a collective that represents the reading culture and community. So we are so happy to be here for our book happy hour podcast episode for March, where we are going to have not one, not two, but three dynamic souls joining us today to talk about the book Decent People. And we will also have two sisters here with us who are also book influencers. So y'all are in for a treat. Stacey, what are you most looking forward to this episode? Oh, and I think you're muted.
I said, I'm just looking for everything we've been working for as a community, right? And here we got 3 guests coming on for a first time. Author, we've been trying to get all the authors, so I feel like we're doing it. Everything.
Absolutely. I'm with you. So we're going to bring them on, y'all. Without further ado, y'all better get ready. It's going to be a dynamic conversation. You get to, again, be introduced, not only have time with the author, two amazing sisters, Jessica and Shelby. So, yeah, I'm going to pass it off to y'all if you want to do a round robin and share with the folks a little bit about who you are and what you're most looking forward to for this episode.
I'll go first. I am Shelby of Shelby in the Bookstore and Shelby in the Book Club. My goal is mostly to diversify everybody's reading. I feel like you can't be well read if you only read one type of book or one type of author. You got to read all of the stuff. And I really feel like reading diversely allows for us to empathize with people more, right? So that's who I am.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica. I am over Literature Noir Club. We are online book club, and same like Shelby, we specialize in diversifying your bookshelf as well as creating community, wellness, putting that forward. Pretty much we meet once a month, and all of the authors that we pick are diverse. And yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deshaun Charles Winslow. In my day-to-day life, I just go by plain Deshaun. But I am the author of Decent People and also In West Mills, which I forgot to grab a copy of that off my bookshelf. But I'm a teacher slash fiction writer. I'm still, fairly new in the game. Having 2 books is a really big deal, but I mean, there are people who have 20, 50 books. So I'm still a baby. And I want to thank you all for having me today. And I just look forward to talking about books and reading and all of that.
Yes. Thank y'all so much for being with us today. And like we like to say, a Lit Love Journey, y'all, books up. Books up, everybody. Yes. Books up, bad vibes down. And that is the tagline for Lit Love Journey, because we want to make sure that people know, this reading journey, it's just that. It's a lot of fun. You get to connect with dope people and you get to take yourself outside of your built-in environment. So yeah, what's y'all reading life like? I'm curious. I'm gonna turn to the author first in the room, but I'm curious, what's your lifestyle like when it comes to reading?
So I have attention issues, and it's, nothing diagnosed, but I know I have something. And so what I do is it's really hard for me to read one book at a time. And so most of the time, I'm often seriously reading at least 3 books at a time. And what I do is I just kind of toggle through them. So like last night, I read some of Moonrise in New Jessup, like 20 pages of it, And then tonight, I'll probably read 20 pages of a memoir that it's a book that's not out yet that I'm reading. And then the next night, I'll read 20, 25 pages of a third book. I don't right now I think I'm just reading two, but most of the time there's three, and I just kind of, toggle through. It's like watching three different Netflix series at once, and I find that it works for me that way. The only time I really hunker down and stick with one book is when I'm reading for the purpose of judging some sort of contest, or if I'm reading to offer a blurb. Then I make myself stick with one book until it's done. Um, but other than that, I definitely do the hopping around.
So we got a book hopper amongst us. I love it. I love it. I need to learn that skill.
How you get books that are not published yet or not out yet? I mean, do you have to be an author for this?
No, you could sign up for. I mean, I get them for that reason, but you can sign up for different. I forget what they call NetGalley. I bet Shelby probably knows the different places you can sign up to get ARCs.
Yeah, NetGalley, you can sign up for like newsletters. There's another one, I forgot the other one's name, but I forgot the other one's name. But you can sign up through NetGalley, you can sign up through the publishers' newsletters. They always have influencer programs. So that's how I get them for the most part, or they'll reach out to me and like send them. So yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. Sign up for like everybody's mailing list, because that's the best way for you to get ARCs, if that's what you're looking for. Jess is actually a lot better at that than I am, because I never check my email. I am terrible at that. If you send me, you are better off sending me a carrier pigeon than to send me an email. But I will say following people on Instagram is a good way too, because I've like had conversations with people that work for these different publishers that happen to work and happen to be the person that can send me an ARC, so on and so forth. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there and to like have these conversations. But mailing lists and NetGalley are usually the top ways that people get ARC and stuff like that.
Definitely harping on building that relationship with the publishers and those people, because I've built a lot of relationships with the publishers where I don't have to do a sign up. We just talk through email or Instagram. So yeah.
Yeah, I know there are a few publishers that like I don't even like, they just have figured out the type of things that I like, and they just send stuff. Like I come home and there are books and I'm like, oh, I don't remember.
Yeah.
And they're free, obviously. Free books.
Yeah, like they just send me stuff and I'll be like, they know me well, because I love me some historical fiction. So like I get a ton of historical fiction books, or things like that. So once you build the relationship, which is not hard to do, sometimes it's as simple as people being like, oh, I really like your content, let me send you something, so build those relationships and don't be shy. Ask. Ask. Send them an email and be like, hey, is there a possibility that y'all could send me X, Y, and Z? And 9 times out of 10, unless they absolutely can't or an email gets lost, 9 times out of 10 they'll send it to you.
All the time. It'll just show, and like harp on the books just showing up at your door. I started getting books like maybe a couple months ago, and then they just started sending them, and I'm just like, another book. I'm not complaining. It's great. Like I'm very happy, but it's like the frequency of the books
like once they know that you are open to it, they like, oh, hold the phone. We can send you books now. Like once they figure it out, you
good. You're best.
Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to sign up for all the mailing lists, and don't be afraid to like, maybe you apply for a content creator thing that they have, program that they have, and you don't get it the first time. Okay, wait a couple of months, do it again. Like don't be afraid to keep trying and to keep asking, and so on and so forth. It's room for all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. That's a hidden gem right there. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I love that most because, folks will sometimes say, reading is inaccessible, or not inaccessible, just in terms of cost, right? Mm-hmm. So when we think about ways to like, have like a hack, it's almost like a hack to being able to get access to more books, And I kind of love that for us, as a Black community.
And like, I'll say there are a lot of bookstores that get ARCs because they're a bookstore, but they offer them as freebies. So like if you go to a bookstore and let's say I went to one recently and it was like, oh, if you spend $25, you can pick a free book off the whatever. And a lot of them are arcs and things that haven't come out yet. So
Yeah.
I would look out for that too. A lot of those sale bins, like they can't sell arcs. So a lot of those freebie bins, like I found tons of authors looking through those freebie bins because there are a bunch of arcs that, the bookstores have read already, or maybe they're not necessarily interested in, and they're just giving them away.
Yeah. I literally left the bookstore once. We were just talking and conversing, and she was like, "Do you want books? We have a whole bunch in the back." And I was like, "Sure." Go back there. She's like, "Here you go. Here I left with like 10 books. All of
Wow.
them.
You gotta be willing to talk to the people, because once you start talking to people, like they're not gonna know if you don't ask. So once you start talking to people and you build a relationship, or it's as simple as asking somebody how they doing today, and you never know what could come out of that conversation. I've walked into plenty of bookstores and left with a ton of friends because Shelby could talk to a brick wall if I had to. So it's you never know. You gotta ask, go into these bookstores, have conversations, ask people. Y'all can feel free to DM me if y'all have any questions. Like we gotta talk to each other, because it's space for all of us. It's just we don't have the resources.
That part. And can you give people what the acronym stands for that you're using?
ARC, it's Advanced Reader Copy.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Just for the folks, we like to just make sure what we notice. One, there aren't a lot of book podcasts, but just having, the you can kind of think about this like the dummy version, not the dummy version, because I don't like the way that sounds, but just making sure to make it plain to people how to access books. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And then also, since we're talking about DMing, can y'all just share your contact information, whether you want it through Instagram, Facebook, or whatever social media, email? That way, if our listeners want to reach out, let us know how to reach you.
For me, it's Shelby and the Bookstore on Instagram and TikTok. On YouTube, I'm Shelby and the Book Club.
Yeah, I am Literature Noir Club on Instagram and on TikTok, 4-eyed girl _. It's my personal one. It started.
I love that though. I'm a 4-eyed girl too. I have contacts.
You have to
all day. I wish I had y'all when I was at elementary school. Kids were cruel.
Mine is Deshaun Charles Winslow. It's just my full name without any apostrophe or anything. Deshaun Charles Winslow. On Instagram. I'm only on Instagram right now.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we were talking about reading habits. I also am a book hopper. I am a mood reader, and I have to accept that about myself. And sometimes I could be like in the middle of something really good, but be in the mood for fantasy, so I'll pick up a fantasy. I also struggle after I read a really good book, because then I like the momentum and the feeling that I get after reading something really good. So then whatever I read next has to give me that same thing. So then I get stuck in a reading slump because I'm like, I want to read all the things, but it's not making me feel the way that I want to feel. So I can't read nothing until I find what makes me feel how I'm looking for. So being a mood reader is a big struggle in my life. But
I definitely feel that, Shelby, because I'm the same way. And then it's hard because you don't know, right?
Right.
I
always feel crazy.
A few pages, I'm like, this isn't really fine up to it.
Right. I always feel crazy because my mom will ask me like, okay, what you reading now? Because she likes to listen to me talk about books. So she's like, okay, what you reading now? And I'll be like, Mommy, I don't know. I can't tell you what this book is about because it's not giving me the feeling that I'm looking for.
It's not like Decent People.
Right. It's not like but I usually read like 2 to 3 books a week. Like that's my comfort zone, like 2 to 3 books a week.
Yeah, for me, I'm more of a TBR reader, and sometimes I can't read 2 or 3 books at once, like Shelby and Deshaun. I have to go one at a time, and if I'm reading another book, I have to listen to it. So like I'll read, like this week I read Ride or Die Manifesto, but I was finishing Sweet Soft Plenty Rhythm, and now I'm listening to Viola Davis's book, and I'm about to read Brother Alive, which is my book club's pick. So like that's how I generally go by it, and I'm very structured when it comes to reading, so I like have to have like it has to be this. But this month it was all over the place because the books went downhill after Yellow Wife. I don't know what happened, but yeah, that I end up like picking up books like what's gonna do it for me this month, and nothing.
Yellow Wife is so good though, and I understand why. Because after I read Yellow Wife, I felt the same way. I was like, I want to read that again. Like I
No,
want to keep reading.
no,
I wanna keep
literally.
reading.
So we need to get up on that book too, it sounds like.
Yes,
Yes,
you
yeah.
do.
Okay.
Yes, you do. Yellow Wife is
Deshaun,
amazing.
have you read that one?
No, I haven't read Yellow Wife yet. That's Sadiqa Johnson, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is. I'm
Yeah.
actually
yeah.
her book, her latest book, The House of Eve, is my book club pick for this month, and it is also amazing. Like
Nice.
her writing, she's a phenomenal person. I got to meet her when The House of Eve came out. She is phenomenal, but her writing is just she is able to transport you. I rave about Yellow Wife. Like if you have not read that, you need to read Yellow Wife.
It's literally so I started from like February with all great books. Like I started Deshaun, I was reading In West Mills, then we did Decent People, then I did another smaller book, like a photography book that I was reading, which was good, and then I did Yellow Wife. So I'm on a good streak, and then boom, it just ends just dramatically. And I was like, I don't know what to read now. So that's how I operate.
See, and I love this conversation because from y'all sharing what y'all are reading and things that are all good, folks can get recommendation, right? Because to your point, I think it's so hard to sometimes know, just what works, right? What's juice, what writing is really doing it, right, in terms of storyline. I think books for me are very similar to movies. You'll have some movies, some sitcoms that just are flops. They try so hard to pull you in, but they just never do. And the same is true with books because we know all good TV comes from what? A book. Like all good TV. Like there isn't one. Like Queen Sugar, for instance. Like I will forever send them my flowers. When I found out it was based on a book, I was like, makes sense because most good TV is based on a book, right? So I just love that we're having this talk about like what y'all into, in terms of reading. Is there anything, Deshaun, you're reading right now that you just want to share with folks that you just like raving about?
Well, I'm definitely enjoying Moonrise over New Jessup. But sometimes what I'll do is I also teach, by the way, so I read a lot of student work, you know. So that's why it takes me a long time to finish a book, pleasure reading, even when I'm reading three at a time. But sometimes what I do in general is I will read a little bit of nonfiction about a topic that's not particularly something that I'm interested in, but I may have heard about an anecdote from the nonfiction, from the memoir or something. Like, for example, a couple of months ago, I started reading um, "Strangers Among Us." That's part of the title. It has a subtitle by Rachel Aviv, and I can't remember. I think I saw something on Instagram. I saw somebody do a post about it on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna download that." So I downloaded an e-reader and started reading. But the book is about mental illness diagnoses, and it has real life anecdotes about various people. And that book kind of took me away. Again, I haven't finished it, but sometimes I find myself really surprised by a recommendation, and I'll read, a third or a half of the book and be like, "Wow, that was a good break from fiction," you know. And then if it's on my e-reader, I can always return to it and finish it like over the summer or something when I'm not working as much. But yeah, sometimes I'll just read something random, for a lack of a better word, just something very different from what I'm used to writing. And as someone who writes fiction and is also teaching fiction, sometimes those little bouts into nonfiction are really good little reprieves for me. Yeah.
I'll get that because
I
even
love that.
Yeah, go ahead, Shelby.
I was gonna ask, like, do you find that because you teach fiction and because you write fiction, that like fiction can be exhausting to you sometimes, or do you find that like because you love it so much, like it's just a nice little like world to live in?
hmm There are moments when it can get exhausting, especially when I'm working on my own. So, like right now, I'm not writing a book. I am sort of in the mental planning stages of a third book. But
Okay.
when I start writing, then I will be frank. Then I will get annoyed with fiction. And the reason is because when I read something, I'm like, oh, I like the way he or she did that chapter ending. Let me now go back to these 5 chapters I wrote and and fix them. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why sometimes when I'm writing, I don't read much at all,
Yeah.
actually.
I mean, there's kind of a fine line with that or a balance, right? Because
Absolutely.
you're being creative, you're an artist, and you're doing your own method of working and writing.
hmm
Feel like that can impede you on, like, because you're kind of comparing your work to somebody else's work. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
kind
there's no way not to compare.
of, yeah,
And I think that's why one of my friends, when she's working on a new book, she doesn't read fiction at all.
right.
And the reason why she doesn't read fiction at all is because she's afraid that she will accidentally steal something. Like, really, we as writers, we tend to borrow from each other, and half of the time we don't realize it until a year later when the book is printed and and then we're like, oh shit, I was reading so and so's book and I think I used their character's name. You just in the moment you just don't even realize it. But um but yeah, it can be tricky, and I think that's why a lot of people who teach fiction, um I think that's why they make use of sabbaticals for like a whole year, and they leave the classroom and they don't read other people's work and they just do nothing but write their own book, because you get to dedicate your brain, just to what you're working on, and not have too much other people's work drift in. But I think nonfiction is really good. I remember when I was working on In West Mills, remember reading pieces of biographies. I was living in Iowa at the time, and I would go to the public library and I would just check out like 3 biographies, and I wouldn't read the whole thing. I just read maybe the first 3 chapters of them, and it was just some. I was like, okay, that's somebody's real life. I cannot borrow from that. I can't, it's like watching a Lifetime biography episode, but yeah, to answer your question, it can be tricky when you are creating and you teaching people how to create that same thing. Yeah, it can be tricky.
That's so interesting to me. Last night I went to a talk for Victor Laval. We were talking about book recommendations. If you guys have not read anything by Victor Laval, I highly suggest that you do. But he was talking about his writing process, and I was like, I never thought about, because I'm not a writer. Like, I like to read. I people say that I should, but I don't. That ain't my wheelhouse. Um, it was so interesting to me because I'm like, I never thought about all that goes into what it takes for you guys to actually write a book. Like, he talked about like one of his books took place in New York. So like he was sick of New York. So this other book had to be somewhere else because he was like, I was so sick of this environment. Like, I live here. I was writing about it. It was so interesting to me. So I just wanted to know, like, it has to be tiring to teach something and for it to be like your love and you want to write, but then it's like it's so much going on. So that's interesting. Thank you for answering that for me.
Yeah. Also, a thing about teaching writing, I should say, the way that we are taught to teach creative writing is often very different from the way it happens in real life. You know?
Yeah,
So,
more about that.
yeah.
I know.
Yeah, when you take a intro to creative writing class, you get a bunch of handouts with a bunch of terms, and then the students are like, well, and now I can't even think. We'll just say foreshadowing for easy example. The students feel they get a handout describing, defining foreshadowing, and they feel like they have to have a foreshadowing in their short story. And I'm like, no, this is just something that some writers do, and actually most writers do it, but we don't all plan to do it, you know. And so sometimes when you're teaching creative writing and you're issuing terms that the department has told you this should be in your curriculum, then the students write a piece and they're trying to use those techniques and everything they write. And um, and us as the writer who has published a book or a story or whatever, we know that the way we're taught to teach writing is not the way we write ourselves. And so this is just, it's this constant, you know, head butting with those two realities. Also, I mean, the concept of workshopping in general, most people don't workshop their their novel with a group of like 20 people. You know what I'm saying? You show it to like three trusted readers, and then if you have an agent, your agent reads it, and then your editor, you know. So maybe five people tops. But the creative writing environment in academia is very different because people are always reading your work. And it doesn't happen that way pre-publication. That's not real life, you know? So it can, you know, I struggle sometimes with the way that creative writing is taught, because it doesn't quite. But I tell my students, I'm very clear with them that, like, those of you who are serious and you want to go out and try to write, you know, and publish, don't expect to write something and have 20 people read it and give you advice. That's not how it happens in the real world. 20, hopefully 20 people will read it after it's published, but not during the creation of it. Yeah.
That's how the critiquing process goes overall, is like you really just have a refined amount of people overall. Because I know for photography in school, we'll have everybody in the class critique your photos. So is it too cloudy when you have too many people critiquing your writing?
For me, so like at the graduate level, I teach mostly undergraduates. And so those class sizes run from 20 to 25. But at the graduate level, a graduate workshop is somewhere between 10 and 12 people. Um, so I would say, so in a MFA program, it's 2 years, 4 semesters. The first couple of semesters, I think it's cool to have 12, 11 to 12 voices giving you feedback. But for me, around the third semester, I didn't want feedback from that many people. It was too much, you know. And I just really wanted the instructor and like maybe three of my classmates, because people come from different, you know, people come from different backgrounds, and so they um you know, often it's with good intentions, but if they don't understand the culture of your work and where those characters are from, you know, geographically and in other respects, then their feedback can be, it can be not helpful. You know,
Mhm.
I'll give you an example with in West Mills, when the main character Not is giving birth to her first child. The oldest lady in the community is there, and she's not even the midwife. She's actually like the mother-in-law of the midwife. And I remember one of my classmates saying, "Well, why is she even there if she's not the midwife? Why does she even need to be in the room?" But what that reader didn't understand is that that was kind of like black midwifery culture. Like the midwife is going to have her mother-in-law who's 80 years old in the room. You know what I'm saying? Because she can look and recognize and say, yeah, everything looking good, or no, something don't look right there. Let's do something different. You know, you're gonna have the old lady in the room, you know, if she's available. And so that was something that I felt like I couldn't, because during workshop you don't really defend your work, you just take the feedback, you know.
Mhm.
And so I was just like, yeah, I just feel like this person wouldn't feel that way if they were from the South. It wasn't necessarily about
Mhm.
race, but I, part of me was like, if they were black they might have understood that too, you know.
No,
So
totally get that. I think that's
mhm.
that goes into just art form, because like whenever you're presenting your work to the world, it's kind of hard, especially as black and brown, especially black artists, is understanding the context of what you're making can be hard to, you shouldn't have to explain your work, but when you're in that formative art world, they're going to critique it and then they're going to be like, well, this shouldn't be here. But like for me, I know why it's here. I know why I did what I did when it came to that. So that's very interesting from a writer's perspective, just from somebody else that's in a different medium in the art world.
But those things are why I tell people to read diversely, because it's those little things that the way that Black people, the way that we honor our elders, right? It's just something instilled in us. It's just something that we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think reading about other cultures or from other authors helps you empathize with those things, right? And helps you understand like, oh, here's this pattern in all of this literature that goes as far back as we can think, by Black people that honor their elders in this certain way. I can think of so many books off the top of my head by Black authors that have this matriarch, right? Whether she is the midwife's mother-in-law or she is a main character in the book, there's always this matriarch that is guiding us somehow, because that's just how our culture is. But then you see it in other cultures, right? Mm-hmm. You read different books and you see how it mimics, or how we're not as different as we like to say that we are. Yeah. You know, it's that's why, because I'm like, I've learned so many things just by reading fiction, not even venturing into the things that I learned from nonfiction, but just from fiction and the way that people write and the things that they decide to highlight and the things that they decide to include in their writing that is a part of them, you know?
Yeah. And I think also for us as Black readers, I think we give other cultures that grace that we don't always get when it comes to art.
Say that again.
I feel like for us, like we can read Asian literature and like identify and understand like why they did something, why they put this character this way. But when it comes to what we write, it's kind of like Deshaun, like that example you pointed out is like, we already know, but why can't you understand from reading other novels that this is how it is, or just understanding the culture, just observing the culture. And I think it's just embedded in our system with literature in general, or just in just culture period, that other cultures don't give us the same grace that we give them.
Right. That God forbid they were able to see themselves in us.
At all.
Right. We have to see ourselves in them, right, in order to assimilate and in order to do things the way that they want us to do them. But God forbid they ever sat back and said, oh, me from an Asian culture, we honor our matriarchs the same way that y'all do. Yeah. God forbid. So it's interesting.
I love what you just said, Shelby. It's like, I feel like your reminder about like the power of reading diversely, like what that can do for you from a cultural standpoint, from a knowledge-based standpoint, it really can't be stated enough, right? Because you can learn so much about a people, this world, humanity, if you read diversely, right? Yep. Just the same as we like to this is just a pop culture example, but we love to diversify our fashion, right? We love to be in the know about all the top designers like Prada, Gucci, whatever the brands are that people love to indulge in. And sometimes I like to consider myself fashion forward, not by labels or names, but just like how I express myself.
How you put things together.
Yeah, that's it. And I think we need to think about books in that way, right? That when we put them together in a collective way that makes us feel good, right? So whether you're mood reading, kind of similar to what you and Stacey were saying about like picking up a book that fits what you're feeling, right? Or if you're reading for the sole purpose of learning about other cultures, you can do that. Like reading can really expose you to some stuff that you will never necessarily think about until you pick up that book. And for me, it's always been through fiction. So I absolutely love your example, Deshaun, about the midwife. And mind you, when I went to go pick up your book, Decent People, the lady at where was I? I was at not Loyalty Books, East City Books on Capitol Hill, and she was like, did you not read Did you read book 1 first? I was like, no, not yet. She's like, child, you should just go ahead and get it now. And I was like, okay, sis. And she was so strongly about like, this man needs to continue writing books about West Mills. And I was like, I didn't know what she meant until I read Decent People. And then I was in the chat with Jessica and Shelby, like, okay, in preparation for this, like, y'all, I know y'all already read the book. We're reading along with you because as Lit Love Journey, we want to be known as this collective for the reading culture. So we're wanting to connect with book clubs. We're wanting to connect with authors so folks can see it as a lifestyle that exists on its own, right? You don't need to like be crushed up with nothing else. It can be like an alternative to nightlife. It can be an option just the same as going to the club. Truly, that's why I want to like promote book clubs. I want to promote authors. I want to promote the books, because that's so important. We need to know like those are viable options and they're fun and it's cool and it's all the things. But I think now is a perfect time to definitely segue to like talk about segment 2, which is about the book without spoilers. So I'm putting this in the camera view so y'all can see it. You know, those of you who do the replay, we appreciate you, Deshawn, for being here with us as the author of this book. Because it's important that folks also see, especially the greater community, that Black books matter, Black authors matter, and it's important that we have these conversations around the text so folks know, like, okay, this is a juicy read, y'all. Like, it's gonna get you on your toes. It's gonna make you stay up late night. I know I was. Here, my partner, my old man, was wanting to go to bed at 2 a.m. He said, cut off the light. I said, no, I want to finish my book. You just gonna have to you okay with the light on? But yeah, let's dive into the book, y'all. Any thoughts y'all want to share? Immediate questions without giving spoilers?
I think me and Jess probably have the same question. So, Deshawn, I don't know if you remember, but Jess and I do a bookish bingo every February for Black History Month, and we picture book Decent People as our February book club pick.
Thank you
And
so much. I do
you're
remember.
welcome. Listen, Jessica and I, we've like become friends. She stuck with me for life. But when I tell you our text message thread, all of the voice notes of the both of us yelling back and forth at each other
Yes.
about who we thought did what and how, and the connections to In West Mills, because we both read In West Mills first. It's just phenomenal. So I want to know, do you plan to expand West Mills? Because in West Mills, I felt like it leaned a little bit more towards like literary fiction, whereas Decent People to me was a mystery. So now in my mind, I'm like, we could get horror, we could get
Mhm.
fantasy, we could get all sorts of things from this little town with all of these people, with all of these different things that they have going on and their personalities and so on and so forth. So I want to know, are you expanding in West Mills? Because Jessica and I
Me
have
and
ideas.
Not are locked in for life.
Yes.
I love her
Not
so
was a
much.
phenomenal character. You have such a way of writing
Mhm.
Southern characters that I was like, he's writing my aunt. Like these are my family members in these books from this little small town that act the same way that you are writing them in these books. They still act this way. They have not changed. So it was so amazing to me to feel seen, or to see my people
Mhm.
in this way. So Jessica and I want to know, are you expanding West Mills? Because if so, we are excited and we have ideas.
Yes.
Yeah, the quick answer is yes. I am taking a break from that setting for my third book, but I do plan to return to West Mills. And because some of those characters that we have met in both books, I want to do something with them. Yeah, with some of them. And so, yeah, the books will come back to West Mills. In terms of like different genres, for lack of a better word, I do think I don't think I'll do horror, but I do think that I'll do a book that's sort of romance, a literary romance at some point, set in West Mills. And I'm thinking that maybe one of Sequoia, maybe. Yeah, Lady Koi. I think that maybe I'll give her like a romance story set in the 90s. That's a loose idea I have right now. Maybe for book 4. Yeah.
I want you to know that Jessica and I will be in first in line. We will be front row and center. If you need
Yes.
test readers, if you need
Yes.
people, whatever you need, an editor, whatever, Jessica
You
and I,
got it.
as a unit, we got you. Whatever you need,
We'll
okay?
do
Thank
the
you.
PR, whatever you need.
Right,
We
the
got
PR, we will put boxes together. We will do all of the things.
Wait a minute. I love it. Yes.
No, me and Jessica, because we
Yes.
got you, okay? You got fans out of us. Both of those books were
Right.
they are amazing for so many different
I
reasons
can't
without
stop
spoiling
right.
anything.
Thanks so much.
Like
Thanks so much.
we still like randomly will send each other voice notes like, remember when such and such happened? Maybe we should have known it. Like, what did we miss in West Mills that would have hinted to decent people? Like, there were so many questions that we had. Like, it was so good. It's so good. So remember Jessica and I when the new books come, because we got whatever you need, we got it.
We
I
are
will.
the
For
same.
everyone here, I get an art. The
Yeah.
next one.
That part, we down with that. Look, so from a reader perspective, would you say folks need to read West Mills before Decent People? Was that like always the intention to Deshaun? Like, I'm just curious, like, what do you
Yeah.
feel like the perspective would be?
No, in fact, I am. I tried. My plan is to not write a series. You know what I'm saying? Like this, it'll be people will probably think of In West Mills and Decent People, and then whatever the next In West Mills book is as a series, but they are not. They happen they have the same setting, and some characters will overlap, but they do not need to be read in order at all. Yeah. Yeah, because I don't want people. Let's just say I write 10 books. I don't want people to feel like they have to start from book one and read them in that order, because they might just want to jump in at book 10 and not go back. So
I think
I'm
that was
gonna try to avoid.
that
Yeah,
was like my favorite thing about it, is that they are very much standalone books, but you you can learn about the characters because of how the stories are. Like they all are, it's one community, right? And like the way that one character acts can be explained by another character's experience and the things that you may go through in a small town. It put me in the mind of Jesmyn Ward's books.
Salvage the Bones and
Thank you. And Sing Unburied Sing, they both take place in the same town, but they're like sister books, right? You don't have to read them together, but when you do read, if you do read them together, whether you read them in order that they came out or not, they're meant to be together. Like they understand each other. There are things that you understand a little bit better. It's like you have these light bulb moments when you read sister books like that. So I think that's one of the reasons that I fell in love with Jesmyn Ward, and another reason why we are now Deshaun Charles Winslow stands, because I'm like, oh, this is so important. Like they don't have to be matchy. You can read them on their own and they're just as impactful, but together they do something different. And they like I said, like they change, your thought perspective changes, right? Like you see things a little bit differently in Decent People from reading in West Mills and vice versa, so
that tone and voice.
So, question. Oh, wait. No, go Jessica. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that tone and voice that is in West Mills carries over to Decent People very well. And you can visualize the town again even better when you're reading the second book. So I think even though it's sister books, I definitely feel like people should read In West Mills at least before, just to get familiar with the town and just the tone and voice that you're going to be reading in.
And so I was just gonna say, looking at kind of the conversation, and hopefully by now y'all energy is kind of peaked and perked up to like, okay, I need to get one of these books, right? If not both, at least one. I was wondering if you can read an excerpt, Deshaun, from page 73, where you, I think, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, you are the author. There are 4 mentions of Decent People in the book Decent People, where it's specifically called out. So I was just wondering, from your voice to have that kind of again, like bring to life those characters when you're reading it aloud. I think that would be a nice offer, a nice gift to those who listen to this recording to hear from you on page 73, how that goes.
Sure. I'm gonna read this. In this scene, um, the character Eunice is sort of, let's see what happens. She's at church and she has decided to solicit some help. That's all I'll say. And this is part of that conversation with the doctor that she's speaking with. Community my ass, Eunice had thought to herself that evening. Almost every woman in the choir had at least one child or a grandchild or was raising someone else's. Choir members weren't short on elderly parents or grandparents either. Eunice believed Dr. Harmon was joining the choir to get new patients, since more than half of the people on the west side of the canal went to the white doctors on the east side. If Dr. Harmon's sudden desire to be active in the church wasn't sign enough, the advertisements all over town were. There were flyers on bright, colorful paper, one on every other telephone pole. Friendly's Pediatrics, they read, with the address and phone number included at the bottom. And when those signs got weathered, Eunice saw Lazarus going around pulling them down and replacing them with new ones. That song you all sang just before today's word, Dr. Harmon said. What is it called again? Rise up and walk. That's it. Heartache and pain will soon be over. It's a beautiful song, a perfect song. Yes, ma'am, Eunice agreed. She wanted to get to the point. Dr. Harmon, I was wondering if there's a day this week I can come by your office and have a word with you. She glanced around to make sure no one was eavesdropping. About my son? Dr. Harmon tilted her head and frowned slightly. Of course, she said. You want me to go? You want me to
I
go a
don't know.
little bit?
That's not a teaser. I don't know what is.
You want to know, one of my favorite things about this book was the Southern lady shadiness that I feel like a lot of people don't catch up on. But that yes
Right.
ma'am wasn't a like I'm being polite. It was just a yeah girl, whatever. You don't care about
Whatever.
this choir, girl.
Literally.
Whatever. You don't care about this choir, ma'am.
Yeah.
It's giving
Get
so
to
much
it.
church lady shadiness that it just, if you're not part of the culture, you just will not get it. It
Right,
just,
like it'll go right over your head if you just don't know. But I'm like, I know that yes ma'am anywhere because I yes ma'am people like that myself.
When you ready for them to get out of your way, yes, ma'am.
Yes ma'am. Sure. Real polite, nice, nasty. Southern women have that down to a
Nice.
T.
nasty.
That nice nasty is deep in our blood, baby.
I had to learn that the hard way, being from the Midwest, moving to North Carolina for a decade. I'm like, so wait, she not really being nice?
Not at all.
No. No.
Not at all, baby. Not at
No.
all.
Yeah.
As someone that moved from Florida to California, that's a whole, they don't know nothing. They are so like the culture and how they do things, how they talk, and how they receive things is, yeah, they don't got it over here. So yeah.
It's true.
And so, again, for me, that excerpt was like, okay, again, the insinuations around what a decent person would do, not do. And I remember putting a quick reel together where it was like, okay, let's take this book around and like go over around DC and like show, like, just kind of, I don't know, kind of like book video, book cam, whatever. I just take like little captions as if I was walking. The book is my eyes, right? So it's gonna go everywhere I would go, right? And I'll show it from that perspective. And one guy wrote in the comments, he's like, "Yeah, that's probably the only time people will see decent people is just then." And I was like,
Mhm.
"He's probably right," because again, the notion around decency is so vast, but it is so specific, right? And I think as a culture, in particular, we've we've become such a like people. You know, what's the one of the favorite songs trending right now? And mind you, y'all, I listen to the song, so it's no judgment, but it's also reality that I'm saying like we've gotten so hardened. You know, what's the song? Energy, FREE. The one song that's teaching people how to spell. It's beautiful, right? I
Yeah.
like it. But we've become so hardened to the point where everything is like so nasty, and this idea of again decency. So I'm just wondering if what y'all thoughts were. What were you hoping readers will get, kind of as a moral around what is decent people? You know what I mean? Like, can you expand on that notion of like decent people so folks can kind of know beforehand, kind of like what are some of the gems they'll get?
Mhm. I think so. A lot of these people, a lot of these characters do indecent things, you know. But I think what makes them decent is that they believe, you know, most of them, they believe in their heart that the indecent behavior is to save someone from some sort of hurt long down the road. You know, Eunice, for example, and I won't spoil, but Eunice believes that what she has embarked on um, before the murders happen, she believes that is to protect her family. You know, um, Ted Temple, when he tells his daughter, I don't want you to do that thing, he believes that the world will scorn her for it and it will be her demise. You know, so all of these characters, they really believe in their heart that they are doing a good thing, but in doing so, they are oppressing another person. Yeah. So I guess you know what I wanted to show is that it's not in any way. I was just having a talk, an interview this past weekend about do we forgive these people who do these indecent things? And I don't know. I think in some cases it is totally forgivable, but I think in some cases it's not. But also remembering that we are as a society, especially in America, and probably you know what, probably the whole world. I don't even know why I said America. We are such victims of patriarchy. My cat is trying to answer the question for me. Um, Patriarchy, capitalism, you know, all this stuff, which causes people to act and believe in ways that are not in our best interest. But we have been taught, many of us have been taught from a young age, this is what you should believe, and this is for this. This should never be done. And you grow up hearing that from age 6 or 7, and then what do? You teach your kids the same thing, you know. Um, so anyway, it's just like sort of having a little bit of compassion for why people do things, not forgiving the behavior, but just maybe just sitting back and saying, well, it's no wonder they believe that, you know.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
empathy, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, which character boiled your blood the most when you're writing? Like you just couldn't wait to get rid of them. Like you wrote them, but you just really got to you in your soul.
Yeah. Let's see. I think it's the doctor. I think it's the doctor. But even so, even though she is kind of like one of the villains, um, she was taught to be that way. You know, when you meet her, she's a villain and she's also a victim because she gets murdered. You know, but and one might expect me to say, well, the murderer is my least favorite character. Um, but she's actually not. She's not a favorite at all, but she's not my least favorite. I think what the doctor. I think the reason why I'm not so fond of the doctor is because she's one of those characters. Her character is inspired by Toni Morrison's "Making Dead" from the Song of Solomon. And it's when a black person in a small black community, when a black person comes into power, whether it's educational power or financial power, they start to behave like the oppressor. They become like the white person in the community. And she is like that, you know. And so that's why she is not a favorite character. I sympathize with her because she is a strong black woman who forged a path that most black women where she's from is not able to have. She gets to medical school and stuff like that and has a medical practice, but she doesn't use it for good,
For
you know.
the whole. But is that why you use it as Dr. Harmon as opposed to her first name? Because most characters use their first name, but I notice with her character, it's always Dr. Harmon.
Dr. Harmon. Yeah, because I want to remove, I don't want readers to get too emotionally attached to her.
That makes so
Yeah.
much sense. That's actually really cool to hear.
Yeah.
It would be like also a form of status tying into her character, because
Mhm.
I know some people kind of like Dr. Harmon that say my name is, I mean, granted, you went through all these years of school, so your prerogative, but they're like, you must address me as this at all times. And it
Yep.
alleviates that, it takes away that human aspect, like you said, like to disconnect from them. So
Mhm.
I like that. Like,
Mhm.
because I didn't like her at all.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot more sense too from like an author's perspective. I was like, oh, okay, I see why you did that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
for me, that kind of ties into the idea of a decent person, right? Because I think with Southern people in particular, it's about the show. It's not
Yes.
about whether or not you are actually a decent human and you are doing good things and you believe in good things and so on and so forth. It's about, do they think you're decent?
Right.
Right?
The perspective of it.
What
So
do the people think about you? That's the important part. So I think her being Dr. Harmon is to add to that, like the ambiance of her, like, oh, I
Yeah.
have this title, I am whatever. So people have to respect me and I'm decent because I'm a
Mhm.
doctor, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And like you said, Shelby, it's like all for show. Because like how it's basically the church is like also there, that is also about show. Eunice was very, yeah, Eunice was very adamant about how people would look at the family versus what she was doing to her son at the end of the day. You know, there was no, it was all about me and show how would I look to the outside public. And I think as it just relates back to like, as a community, we do that so much, especially inside our community, that
Mhm.
we're all about show but never about being a decent actual person.
Right.
So yeah,
right, it's better to hide it under the carpet rather than just portray the true reality of being human. Because that's
Mhm.
the thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I get it. I felt a lot of that.
Mhm.
And I feel like, again, when it comes to a book like this, y'all let me know like what you think. But it's like every last person technically had a flaw, right? And that's such like a pure reflection to real life, right? Every last one of us on this episode, every last one of us listening to this recording, we all have something, right, that we fall short in being, right? Whether it's a better wife, a better mother, a better author, a better partner, a better whatever. And sometimes there are things we do that we hopefully have regret and remorse about, right? But looking at this book, kind of that being said, in inverse, what was everyone's favorite character? Again, this is just so we give the reader something to look forward to when they get their copy. Who was y'all's favorite character?
Josephine. You
Josephine
Shelby,
for me too. I
yeah.
love Josephine. She was spicy. She was on a mission.
Yep. She
And
reminds
she was willing to do the work too. That was my favorite part, because no matter what, sorry to cut you off, Jess, no matter what like obstacle she hit, she just was like, I'm not taking that for an answer. Like, it's not enough.
yeah.
Like, she just had to know. I loved her.
She was a straight shooter. I I like the fact that she kind of reminded me of Not, and why I liked her so much as well is like the sternness of both of them like was what you needed in the book as a really great main character essentially. So yeah, I really loved her.
Thank you. She is a little bit. It's funny that you said she reminds you a little bit of Not because she is. I had trouble. I had trouble creating Joe, and I was like, oh, I can't get this character right. And my editors said the same thing. They were like, well, we just feel like we don't know her deeply enough, you know. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna borrow some personality traits from Not, but she'll just be not an alcoholic and she will not curse as much, you know. Um, but it's funny, Jessica, that she reminds you of Not because they do share that sternness, that no bullshit, you know, type of personality. So I'm glad that came through.
I kind of like Nate too. Josephine was my favorite, but since everybody else is saying it,
Yeah, yeah. Nate is a good guy. You
I
know,
just feel like he was like the mediator. Like he could
Yeah.
see things from a different perspective when everybody was just looking at like, this is what everybody's
Yeah.
seeing. This is what we have to do. He's like, well, hold on a second. Let me give you this perspective to look at before you act. So I kind of liked it.
Mhm.
Maybe I got trust issues because I was always kind of side-eyeing Nate the whole time because it was just something in my mind was like, well, how he know everything? Why he got all these different perspectives?
Yes.
Why is he like that? What's wrong
Yeah.
with him that he just a fly on the wall everywhere? He just know everybody's business by happenstance.
Uh-huh.
What's going on? So maybe I have trust issues.
Mhm.
It took me a while to warm up to him because every time people say something, I'll be like, why are you saying that? What you mean? I don't.
Yeah, he was I was like, something's not
I'm
right.
glad you picked up on that because I had to do these little things with people where I'm like, I want the reader to be like what you just said, you know, like, he just happened to be such and such place on the night with his dad, you know, and
Right.
I wanted readers to be like, could it have been Nate? You know, could it have been so and so? Could it have been so and
I
so? So
definitely
that's
was like suspicious of him the whole time because even when,
good.
well, I can't say that without spoiling it, but just like how he went about stuff, I was just like, well, it's got to be him. It's got to be. There's
Yes.
the answer. It's got
So
to be.
I never once thought it was him. Not once, ever.
Really?
Didn't. I was
I sent a voice note to Shelby. I was like, Nate did it, and I
Yeah.
know he did.
And
There's
I was
no
like,
way.
and it was him. The whole time it was him. He know too much. And he just was so calm about it too. Like he never really got riled up. He was never really like I would have expected there to be like a lot more emotion from him, but he would just be like, no, not that. And it was making me mad because like I was like, maybe I need to go to West Mills and talk to him myself because
Mhm.
something I don't like it.
But I honestly, I think that's like a true depiction of a Southern, like, you know, what am I trying to say? Like a characteristic or just like, it's just, that was his mannerism and then the way he was raised. So I picked up on that right up front. I never once thought like, oh, maybe it's him, but maybe that's just me.
I don't know. It was just something about, I guess it was like my grandmother in my head being like, you know, it's just stuff that you don't say or like stuff that you don't do. And like for his character, like he was grown, but like stay in a child's place, right? Because it kind of goes back to how we deal with our elders. So it's like every time Josephine and his father were talking, it was like he had something to say. So a part of me was like, why won't he shut up? Like this is not, they're not like talking to him. Like even at his big age, even at his big grown age, they not talking to him.
Yeah.
I have a cousin like him, so immediately I'm like, I get it though.
So like that, I guess that's where my mindset was of like, even me being an adult, like being in the kitchen with my aunts and my mom and stuff like that. Like I'm grown, but it's still stuff that they talk about. They're like, oh, okay, I got to get out now because this ain't for me. So it was like, why he's still there? Why I don't understand.
He in grown folks' business.
Right, he in grown folks' business. He need to stay in a child's place. This ain't got nothing to do with him until somebody calls his name.
So the only spoiler we're giving away is that Nate is definitely not the killer.
Right. Okay. Spoiler alert. It's not him.
I'm sorry.
It could have been. My bad, y'all.
That's it.
That's fine. That's not a bad spoiler. I appreciate y'all so much because again, this book, it definitely keeps you on your toes the entire time in terms of like just wanting to know what happens, right? And just seeing all the reflections of indecency, right? It was fun to read, and I think to the points around what's displayed about Southern lifestyle and people from the South, I think it's also quite beautiful. And often, if we realize it too, there's a lot of complexity, right? When it comes to the Southern stories and again, Southern people. So I just feel like this book did all of that to bring that out in such subtle ways that folks will easily, I think, identify whether you're from the South, from the North, whatever. We all know people like the folk. Yes, in West Mills. So I often found myself saying, I don't know why I sing the song in West Philadelphia, born, I know but in West Mills, born and raised. I'm like, where would that song go? I don't know. But it felt like it could be a vibe because West Mills feels very real in how you portray it, right? And that's even not having read the first, book, West Mills. So definitely feel privileged, glad to have connected with you, Shelby, Jessica, and definitely Deshawn for writing this book. Like it was just an amazing journey I think you took people on. I do want us to round the conversation to go to segment 3 to just kind of focus on like for the culture. What are the things you want people to like know? What are the events? Any of you have coming up? What are the things that you are most excited about from a reading or book perspective? If you wouldn't mind giving the tea, so to speak, I think that would be dope for listeners. And anybody can start.
I'll just say, so my book tour is pretty much over. The things that I'm going to be doing next are festivals, so that there won't be thus a spotlight on me. But if any of the viewers are in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles area, the LA Times Book Fair is next month. From I think it starts on the 21st and ends like on the 23rd or 24th. And so I will be speaking on a panel or two, I can't remember, during that weekend. But you can Google the LA Times Book Prize Festival, I think is what it's called. But in general, I'll just say definitely to piggyback on what Shelby and Jessica have said, read diversely. It is one of the best ways to learn about various cultures, and even within our Black culture, read people from different regions of the country. Read a book by a New Yorker, read a book by a person from LA, from the South, from the Midwest, because while we share an experience, we are not a monolith. And all these regions have different types of ways of interacting with the world. So that's my piece of advice. Read widely. Thanks for having me, y'all.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Read widely. For me, I am actually doing a book discussion for my book club on Saturday, April 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with a friend of mine, Satoria. We will be discussing The House of Eve by Sadiqa Johnson. I'm super excited to talk about this book because it is really good and it's thought-provoking in a lot of ways that it kind of made me want to unlearn some stuff that I didn't realize that I was harboring. That goes back to learning things from fiction books, right? So yeah, that's all that I have going on.
Can you repeat that one more time? Saturday, April 1st, what?
At 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to be talking about The House of Eve by Sadiqa Johnson.
And this is on Instagram?
Yes, it is. It's on Instagram. But yeah, it's kind of like bringing some stuff up that I was like, maybe I need to talk to my therapist about some stuff because I didn't know that I was carrying them feelings around with me. But it is a very, 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 very good book. So yeah, that's all that I have going on. Follow me on Instagram. According to Jessica, I'm funny. So you'll laugh and you'll get some book recommendations.
I love
Thanks
it.
for having me, guys.
So what's next up for me? I have our book club discussion on April 5th, which is Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. PST / 7:30 EST. And we'll be discussing my book club's book of the month, Brother Alive by Zain Khalid. So when I say diversely, I try to make sure that all our books are different, from different regions of the world. And I'll also putting forth Black people at the end of the day. What else? And Deshaun, I am in LA and I do plan to be at the book festival. So let me know which days you're going to be there. I think I have a shoot, but I'm going to make it work one of those days to come. And what else? And then our book of the month in April is All the Lonely People by Mike Gale. I'm excited about that one as well. So if you would like to join that, since the month is almost over, you can definitely just go to my Instagram and click the link in bio to join the book club. We hold our meetings via Zoom. So yeah, that's about it.
I love that. And can you all just again remind folks when it comes to a book club, just the same as I make this comparison because there are so many ways you can have fellowship, right? Obviously, there's the church, there's your community center, there's the local library, but there are so many ways to have fellowship. And I am firmly of the belief that if you are a part of a book tribe, that is also a type of fellowship. So can you just explain, folks, are there requirements to join either of you with your book clubs?
Absolutely not. I tell everybody, if you can make it that month, make it. If you can't, you can't. I get it. Life be happening to people. So I don't want to make a book club seem like it's this life or death thing that you have to join and it's like a requirement. You must show up to every meeting. I tell people, I get it. My life is crazy. Your life is crazy. We be lifing out here as adults. Just at least try to read the book of the month just to get some reading in at least. And if you can't, try again next month, so there's no requirements.
There's no requirements for mine either. I do all of my discussions on Instagram Live and I save them, so there's no sign up. If you see my post of what the book is and you think it's interesting, join us. We'll talk about it at the end of the month. And I save the lives just in case, okay, you couldn't read it this month, but in 6 months from now you read the book, you want to be able to go back and look and see what we talked about and comment or whatever. It's always there. I tried to join some book clubs before and I was like, why do I feel like I'm taking a college course? Why does this feel very academic? Which is not a bad thing. Some people need that structure, but in the household that I run, we don't do that over here. No. I want people to actually read. Reading is fun. Reading is healthy. Reading is so many things and it adds so much to people's lives that it's I want it to be easy. I want it to be easy. So no requirements over here.
Absolutely love that. Thank y'all so much. Stacey, I don't know if you have any other parting words, but I appreciate each of you, Jessica, Shelby, Deshaun, for being with us. Again, Lit Love Journey is all about being a collective for readers, being a collective for the reading culture. So being able to have these conversations about what it's like to be an avid reader, or recommendations about a particular book, it is special. And I do look at y'all as our reading partners for life, you know what I'm saying? So we're gonna pull up any given month to tune into what y'all doing, promote what y'all doing, because that's what it's all about. Just the same as we like to share music on Spotify, share music via text, share music with our reels, we should get in habit of doing that same thing when it comes to book life. So this is just our way of doing that. So we appreciate y'all for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Simona said. I do want to thank you. This has been a great session, a great live. I got a lot of helpful information. I really want to share it to our followers and hopefully some move over to your groups. But it's been amazing. So I appreciate all of y'all for joining today.
Thanks for the support. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, y'all. Have a beautiful week. Thank you.
Bye.